Hyperion, Book 1. Deep in the shady sadness of a vale, far sunken from the healthy breath of morn, far from the fiery noon and eve's one star, sat gray-haired Saturn, quiet as a stone, still as the silence about his lair. Forest on forest hung about his head, like cloud on cloud. No stir of air was there. Not so much as life on a summer's day robs not one light seed from the feathered grass. But where the dead leaf fell, there did it rest. A stream went voiceless by, still deadened more by reason of his fallen divinity. Spreading a shade, the naiad, mid her reeds, pressed her cold finger closer to her lips. Along the margin, sand, large footmarks went, no further than to where his feet had strayed and slept there since. Upon the sodden ground his old right hand lay nerveless, listless, dead, unsceptered, and his realmless eyes were closed, while his bowed head seemed listening to the earth, his ancient mother, for some comfort yet. It seemed no force could wake him from his place, but there came one who with a kindred hand touched his wide shoulders, after bending low with reverence, though to one who knew it not. She was a goddess of the infant world. By her stature, the tall Amazon had stood a pygmy's height. She would have taken Achilles by the hair and bent his neck, or with a finger stayed Ixion's wheel. Her face was large as that of Memphian Sphinx, pedestaled haply in a palace court when sages looked to Egypt for their lore. But oh, how unlike marble was that face! How beautiful! If sorrow had not made sorrow more beautiful than beauty's self, there was a calming fear in her regard, as if calamity had but begun, as if the wayward clouds of evil days had spent their malice, and the sullen rear was with its stored thunder laboring up. One hand she pressed upon that aching spot where beats the human heart, as if just there, though an immortal, she felt cruel pain. The other upon Saturn's bended neck she laid, and to the level of his ear, leaning with parted lips, some words she spake, in solemn tenor and deep organ tone. Some mourning words, which in our feeble tongue would come in these like accents. Oh, how frail to that large utterance of the early gods! Saturn, look up! Though wherefore, poor old king, I have no comfort for thee, no, not one. I cannot say, Oh, wherefore sleepest thou? For heaven is parted from thee, and the earth knows thee not, thus afflicted for a god. And ocean too, with all its solemn noise, has from thy scepter passed, and all the air is emptied of thine hoary majesty. Thy thunder, conscious of a new command, rumbles reluctant o'er our fallen house, and thy sharp lightning in unpracticed hands scorches and burns our once serene domain. O aching time, O moments big as years, all as ye pass swell out the monstrous truth, and press it so upon our weary griefs that unbelief has not a space to breathe. Saturn, sleep on. O thoughtless! Why did I thus violate thy slumberous solitude? Why should I ope thy melancholy eyes? Saturn, sleep on, while at thy feet I weep. As when, upon a tranced summer night, those green-robed senators of mighty woods, tall oaks, branch-charmed by the earnest stars, dream, and so dream all night without a stir, save from one gradual, solitary gust, which comes upon the silence and dies off, as if the ebbing air had but one wave. So came these words, and went, the while in tears she touched her fair, large forehead to the ground, just where her falling hair might be outspread, a soft and silken mat for Saturn's feet. One moon, with alteration slow, had shed her silver seasons 4 upon the night, and still these two were postured motionless, like natural sculpture in cathedral cavern, the frozen god still couchant on the earth, and the sad goddess weeping at his feet. until at length old Saturn lifted up his faded eyes and saw his kingdom gone, and all the gloom and sorrow of the place, and that fair kneeling goddess, and then spake as with a palsied tongue, and while his beard shook horrid with such aspen malady, O tender spouse of gold Hyperion, Thea, I feel thee ere I see my face. Look up, and let me see our doom in it. Look up, and tell me if this feeble shape is Saturn's. Tell me if thou hearest the voice of Saturn. Tell me if this wrinkling brow, naked and bare of its great diadem, peers like the front of Saturn. Who had power to make me desolate? Whence came the strength? How was it nurtured to such bursting forth, while fate seemed strangled in my nervous grasp? But it is so, and I am smothered up, and buried from all godlike exercise, of influence benign on planets pale, of admonitions to the wind and seas, of peaceful sway above men's harvesting, and all those acts which Deity Supreme doth ease its heart of love in. I am gone away from my own bosom. I have left my strong identity, my real self, somewhere between the throne and where I sit, here on this spot of earth. Search, Thea, search, open thine eyes eternal, and sphere them round upon all space, space starred and lorn of light, space regioned with life air and barren void, spaces of fire, and all the yawn of hell. Search, Thea, search, and tell me if thou seest a certain shape or shadow making way with wings or chariot fierce to repossess a heaven he lost erewhile. It must be of ripe progress. Saturn must be king. Yes, there must be a golden victory. There must be gods thrown down, and trumpets blown of triumph, calm, and hymns of festival upon the gold clouds metropolitan. Voices of soft proclaim and silver stir, of strings and hollow shells, and there shall be beautiful things made new. For the surprise of the sky children, I will give command. Thea, 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 where is Saturn? This passion lifted him upon his feet, and made his hands to struggle in the air, his druid locks to shake and ooze with sweat, his eyes to fever out, his voice to cease. He stood, and heard not Thea's sobbing deep, a little time, and then again he snatched utterance thus. But cannot I create? Cannot I form? Cannot I fashion forth another world, another universe, to overbear and crumble this to naught? Where is another chaos? Where? That word found way unto Olympus, and made quake the rebel three. Thea was startled up, and in her bearing was a sort of hope, and thus she quick-voiced spake, yet full of awe. This cheers our fallen house. Come to our friends, O Saturn, come away and give them heart. I know the covert, for thence came I hither. Thus brief, then with beseeching eyes, she went with backward footing through the shade a space. He followed, and she turned to lead the way through aged boughs that yielded like the mist, which eagles cleave up mounting from their nest. Meanwhile, in other realms, big tears were shed. More sorrow like to this, and such like woe, too huge for mortal tongue or pen of scribe. The Titans fierce, self-hid, or prison-bound, groaned for the old allegiance once more, and listened in sharp pain for Saturn's voice. But one of the whole mammoth brood still kept his sovereignty and rule and majesty. Blazing Hyperion on his orbed fire still sat, still snuffed the incense, teeming up from man to the sun's god, yet unsecure, for as among us mortals omens drear fright and perplex, so also shuddered he, not at dog's howl or gloombird's hated screech, or the familiar visiting of one upon the first toll of his passing bell, or prophesyings of the midnight lamp, but horrors, portioned to a giant nerve, oft made Hyperion ache. His palace bright, bastioned with pyramids of glowing gold, and touched with shade of bronzed obelisks, glared a blood red through all its 1,000 courts. Arches and domes and fiery galleries, and all its curtains of Aurorian clouds, flushed angrily, while sometimes eagles' wings, unseen before by god or wondering men, darkened the place, and neighing steeds were heard, not heard before by gods or wondering men. Also, when he would taste the spicy wreaths of incense, breathed aloft from sacred hills, instead of sweets, his ample palate took savor of poisonous brass and metal sick. And so, when harbored in the sleepy west, after the full completion of fair day, for rest divine upon exalted couch, and slumber in the arms of melody, he packed away the pleasant hours of ease, with stride colossal, on from hall to hall, while far within each aisle and deep recess his winged minions in close clusters stood, amazed and full of fear, like anxious men who on wide plains gather in panting troops when earthquakes jar their battlements and towers. Even now, while Saturn, roused from icy trance, went step for step with Thea through the woods, Hyperion, leaving twilight in the rear, came slope upon the threshold of the west. Then, as was wont, his palace door flew ope in the smoothest silence, save what solemn tubes, blown by the serious zephyrs, gave of sweet and wandering sounds, slow-breathed melodies, and like a rose in vermeil tint and shape, in fragrance soft and coolness to the eye, that inlet to severe magnificence stood full-blown for the god to enter in. He entered, but he entered full of wrath. His flaming robes streamed out beyond his heels and gave a roar as if of earthly fire that scared away the meek ethereal hours and made their dove wings tremble. On he flared, from stately nave to nave, through bowers of fragrant and enwreathed light, and diamond-paved, lustrous, long arcades, until he reached the great main cupola. There, standing fierce beneath, he stamped his foot, and from the basements deep to the high towers jarred his own golden region, and before the quavering thunder thereupon had ceased, his voice leapt out, despite of godly curb, to this result. O dreams of day and night! O monstrous forms! O effigies of pain! O spectres busy in a cold, cold gloom! O lank-eared phantoms of black-weeded pools! Why do I know ye? Why have I seen ye? Why is my eternal essence thus distraught to see and behold these horrors new? Saturn is fallen. Am I too to fall? Am I to leave this haven of my rest, this cradle of my glory, this soft clime, this calm luxuriance of blissful light, these crystalline pavilions and pure fanes of all my lucent empire? It is left, deserted, void, nor any haunt of mine. The blaze, the splendor, and the symmetry I cannot see, but darkness, death and darkness, even here into my center of repose, the shady visions come to domineer, insult and blind and stifle up my pomp. Fall! No, by Tellus and her briny robes! Over the fiery frontier of my realms I will advance a terrible right arm, shall scare that infant thunderer, rebel Jove, and bid old Saturn take his throne again. He spake, and ceased, the while with a heavier throat, held struggle with his throat, but came not forth. For as in theatres of crowded men, hubbub increases, more they call out, hush. So at Hyperion's words, the phantoms pale bestirred themselves, thrice horrible and cold, and from the mirrored level where he stood, a mist arose, as from a scummy marsh. At this, through all his bulk, an agony crept gradual from the feet unto the crown, like a lithe serpent, vast and muscular, making slow way with head and neck convulsed from overstrained might. Released, he fled to the eastern gates, and full 6 dewy hours before the dawn in-season dew should blush, he breathed fierce breath against the sleepy portals, cleared them of heavy vapors, burst them wide, suddenly upon the ocean's chilly streams. The planet orb of fire, whereon he rode, each day from east to west the heavens through, spun round in sable curtaining of clouds, not therefore veiled quite, blindfold and hid, but ever and anon the glancing spheres, circles and arcs in broad belting color, glowed through, and wrought upon the muffling dark, sweet-shaped lightnings from the nadir deep, up to the zenith, hieroglyphics old, which sages and keen-eyed astrologers, then living on the earth with laboring thought, won from the gaze of many centuries, now lost, save what we find on remnants huge of stone or marble swart, their import gone, their wisdom long since fled. 2 wings this orb possessed for glory, 2 fair argent wings, ever exalted at the gods' approach. And now from forth the gloom their plumes immense rose one by one, till all outspreaded were, while still the dazzling globe maintained eclipse, awaiting for Hyperion's command. Fain would he have commanded, fain took throne and bid the day begin, if but for change. He might not, no, though a primeval god, the sacred seasons might not be disturbed. Therefore the operations of the dawn stayed in their birth. Even as here 'tis told, those silver wings expanded sisterly, eager to sail their orb, the porches wide opened upon the dusk demesnes of the night, and the bright Titan, frenzied with new woes, unused to bend, by hard compulsion bent, his spirit to the sorrow of the time, and all along a dismal rack of clouds, upon the boundaries of day and night, he stretched himself in grief and radiance faint. There, as he lay, the heaven with its stars looked down on him with pity, and the voice of Coelus from the universal space thus whispered low and solemn in his ear. O brightest of my children dear, earth-born and sky-engendered, son of mysteries, all unrevealed even to the powers which met at thy creating, at whose joys and palpitations sweet and pleasures soft, I, Coelus, wonder how they came and whence, and at the fruits thereof, what shapes they be, distinct and visible, symbols divine, manifestations of that beauteous life, diffused unseen through eternal space. Of these new formed art thou, O brightest child, of these thy brethren and the goddesses. There is sad feud among ye, and rebellion of son against his sire. I saw him fall. I saw my firstborn tumbled from his throne. To me his arms were spread, to me his voice found way from forth the thunderers around his head. Pale walks I, and in vapors hid my face. Art thou too near such doom? Vague fear there is, for I have seen my sons, most unlike gods. Divine ye were created, and divine in sad demeanor, solemn and undisturbed, unruffled, like high gods ye lived and ruled. Now I behold in you fear, hope, and wrath, actions of rage and passion, even as I see them on the mortal world beneath, in men who die. This is the grief, O son, sad sign of ruin, sudden dismay and fall. Yet do thou strive as thou art capable, and thou canst move about, an evident god, and canst oppose to each malignant hour ethereal presence. I am but a voice. My life is but the life of winds and tides. No more than winds and tides can I avail, but thou canst. Be thou, therefore, in the van of circumstance. Yea, seize the arrow's barb before the tense string murmur. To the earth, for thou wilt find Saturn and his woes. Meanwhile I will keep watch on thy bright sun, and of thy seasons be a careful nurse. Ere half this region whisper had come down, Hyperion arose, and on the stars lifted his curved lids, and kept them wide until it ceased, and still he kept them wide, and still they were the same bright, patient stars. Then with a slow incline of his broad breast, like a diver in the pearly seas, forward he stooped over the airy shore, and plunged, all noiseless, into the deep night.